I'm Zoe, and I'm 29 years old. 2 days ago, I heard my husband tell his best friend, I'm gonna leave her with nothing, not even a house to live in. She's too stupid to suspect anything. Today, he walked into our kitchen with divorce papers in his hand and a smug smile on his face. What he didn't know was that I'd already moved every single penny of my money. His expression when he found out? Absolutely priceless. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely blindsided by someone you trusted. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. Because ladies, this is a masterclass in how not to underestimate your wife. It was a Friday afternoon when my world came crashing down, though at the time, I thought I was just being a suspicious wife. Ryan had been acting weird for weeks. Every Friday, he'd disappear for hours with some excuse about work meetings or hanging with his buddy Marcus. Weekend trips became solo adventures that I wasn't invited to join. Now, I'm not usually the paranoid type, but when your husband starts treating you like an unwanted house guest in your own home, even the most trusting wife starts asking questions. That particular Friday, I decided to leave work early. I told my assistant I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely a lie. My gut had been churning for days with this nagging feeling that something was off. When I turned onto our street, I saw 2 cars in our driveway. Ryan's black BMW and a silver Honda I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to pull right in and march through the front door. Instead, something made me park 3 houses down and walk around to our back gate. Call it women's intuition, or maybe I just watched too many detective shows. Our house has this weird layout where the kitchen window faces the backyard, and you can hear everything if someone's talking loudly. I crept up to that window like some kind of suburban spy, feeling ridiculous but unable to stop myself. And honestly, best decision I ever made. That's when I heard Ryan's voice, clear as day, talking to someone I assumed was Marcus. But Ryan wasn't discussing weekend plans or work drama. He was laying out a detailed strategy for how he planned to destroy me financially. Because apparently, that's what loving husbands do in their spare time. The thing is, Ryan was saying, his voice casual like he was discussing the weather, she signed a prenup that protects my assets, but it doesn't protect hers. Once I file for divorce, I can claim half of everything she brought into this marriage. My knees went weak. Half of everything? Ladies, I'd built my consulting business from nothing. Every dollar in my accounts came from years of working 16-hour days, hustling for clients, and sacrificing weekends. And this man was discussing it like it was his retirement plan. What about the house? The other voice asked. I still couldn't see who it was, but I was getting a full education in financial betrayal. She bought it before we got married, but she added my name to the deed like the trusting little wife she is. I convinced her it was romantic, that we should own everything together. Really, it was just smart planning on my part. The sound of their laughter made my stomach lurch. Nothing quite like discovering your marriage is actually a long-term theft operation, you know? The best part, Ryan continued, and oh, there was more, is that she has no idea what's coming. I've been moving my own money around for months, setting up accounts she doesn't know about. When this hits, I'll walk away with everything I came in with plus half of hers. She'll be left with basically nothing. Dude, that's cold even for you, Marcus replied. She seems like a nice girl. Nice doesn't pay the bills, brother. And let's be real, she's got more money than she knows what to do with. I'm just redistributing the wealth. I had heard enough. Actually, I had heard more than enough. My husband of just 4 months, the man I'd trusted with everything, was planning to rob me blind. And he thought I was too stupid to see it coming. Well, surprise, honey, turns out stupid women don't build million-dollar businesses. Looking back, I should have seen the red flags from day one, but when you're falling in love, you tend to ignore the small things that don't add up. Or in my case, the not-so-small things. Because honestly, ladies, the signs were there. I just chose to interpret them as romance instead of reconnaissance. I met Ryan at a networking event downtown. I was there representing my consulting firm, trying to land new clients, when this gorgeous guy in an expensive suit walked up to my booth. Tall, dark hair, perfect smile, and enough confidence to fill the room. The kind of man who makes you forget you're supposed to be working. He told me he was in real estate development and was looking for someone to help him rebrand his company. I've heard amazing things about your work, he said, flashing that killer smile. Someone told me you're the best in the city. Now, I should mention that his expensive suit was actually just expensive looking. I found out later it was from one of those discount designer stores. But hey, the man knew how to dress for the part. Give credit where it's due. I was flattered, obviously. My business was doing well, but I was still building my reputation. Having someone like Ryan as a client would be huge for my portfolio. What I didn't realize was that I was the one being assessed as a potential client. Our first meeting was supposed to be professional. We met at this upscale coffee shop to discuss his project. But within minutes, Ryan had steered the conversation from business to personal. He wanted to know about my background, my family, my goals. He was charming, attentive, and made me feel like I was the most interesting person in the world. "You're not what I expected," he said about halfway through our coffee. "Most successful women I meet are so focused on work that they forget to actually live. Ladies, if a man ever tells you that successful women forget to live, what he's really saying is that he's intimidated by your independence and would prefer you to be more dependent." But at the time, somehow he made it sound like a compliment. The business project never materialized. Ryan claimed his investors pulled out at the last minute due to market conditions. Convenient, right? But he asked if I'd like to have dinner anyway. "Just as friends," he said. "I enjoy talking to you." One dinner turned into 3 dates in 1 week. Ryan was intense in his pursuit, sending flowers to my office, texting me constantly, making me feel like I was the center of his universe. After years of failed relationships with guys who couldn't handle my success, Ryan seemed different. He wasn't intimidated by my business or my independence. If anything, he seemed impressed by it. "I love that you're your own boss," he told me after we'd been dating for a month. "There's nothing sexier than a woman who doesn't need anyone." The irony of that statement is almost laughable now. What he really loved was that I had money he could eventually access. We moved fast. Maybe too fast. Within 6 weeks, Ryan was staying at my place most nights. Within 2 months, he'd brought up marriage. Not as a proposal, just as something that seemed inevitable between us. You know, the way normal people discuss vacation plans. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he told me one night as we lay in bed. "I know it sounds crazy, but I can see us building a life together." When he proposed 3 months after our first date, I said yes without hesitation. The ring was gorgeous, way more expensive than anything I would have picked for myself. Ryan insisted on paying for it, said it was important to him that he provide for me in traditional ways. I found out later he'd put it on a credit card that he never intended to pay off himself. The wedding planning moved just as quickly. Ryan had opinions about everything, from the venue to the guest list. He wanted something small and elegant, just close family and friends. Looking back, I realized he was trying to limit the number of people who might ask inconvenient questions about his background or finances. Smart man, I'll give him that. My business mentor, Sarah, was the only person who voiced concerns about the speed of our relationship. During lunch one afternoon, she casually asked if I'd done any kind of background check on Ryan. "Background check?" I laughed. "What do you think this is, a business merger?" "In some ways." "Marriage is exactly that," Sarah said gently. "You're combining lives, assets, legal responsibilities. You wouldn't enter a business partnership without due diligence." But I was too wrapped up in the romance of it all to listen. Ryan made me feel things I'd never experienced before. He was passionate, devoted, and seemed genuinely excited about our future together. Or at least, genuinely excited about my bank account's future. The prenup conversation came up a month before the wedding. Ryan brought it up, which surprised me. Most gold diggers try to avoid prenups, right? "I know it's not romantic," he said, "but my lawyer insists it's necessary, just to protect what we each bring into the marriage." I agreed immediately. I had more assets than he did, so a prenup seemed smart. Ryan's lawyer drew up the documents, and I signed them after what I thought was careful review. My own lawyer looked them over and said they seemed standard. What none of us realized was how carefully worded everything was. Ryan's lawyer was apparently much smarter than we gave him credit for. Our wedding was beautiful. Exactly what I'd dreamed of. Ryan was the perfect groom, attentive and loving, making speeches about how lucky he felt to marry his best friend. His family seemed nice enough, though I noticed they asked a lot of questions about my business and my financial situation. You know, normal wedding conversation topics. For the first few months of marriage, everything seemed perfect. Ryan was supportive of my work, interested in my clients, always asking about my day. He helped around the house, cooked dinner when I was working late, and made me feel like we were true partners. True partners in my financial success, as it turns out. But then small things started to change. Ryan began offering suggestions about my business finances, proposing ways I could optimize my accounts and investments. He volunteered to handle more of our household finances, saying it would give me more time to focus on my clients. "Let me take care of the boring stuff," he said. "You're too valuable to waste time on bill paying and account management." I thought it was sweet. My husband wanted to make my life easier. So I added his name to the deed of our house and gave him access to some of our joint accounts. After all, we were married. We were supposed to share everything. Right, ladies? That's what they tell us anyway. Standing in my backyard, listening to my husband plot my financial destruction, I felt something shift inside me. Not heartbreak, not even anger. Just cold, calculating clarity. And honestly, a little bit of excitement. Because Ryan thought he was playing chess while I was playing checkers. He was about to find out how wrong he was about pretty much everything. I backed away from the window and walked to my car like I was in a trance. But once I got behind the wheel, my brain kicked into overdrive. Ladies, if there's one thing building a business teaches you, it's how to think strategically when everything's falling apart. And boy, was I about to put that education to good use. My first call was to David Chen, my lawyer. David and I had gone to college together, and I trusted him completely. More importantly, he was ruthless when he needed to be, and something told me I was going to need ruthless. Zoe? David answered on the first ring. What's going on? You sound weird. I need you to listen carefully and don't ask questions yet, I said, pulling away from my neighborhood. My husband is planning to divorce me and take half my assets. I just overheard him discussing the whole strategy with his friend. There was a pause. How much time do we have? I don't know, maybe days, maybe hours. What do I need to do right now? First, don't go home. Don't confront him. Don't let him know you know anything. Second, meet me at my office in 30 minutes. And Zoe, bring every financial document you can access remotely. Bank statements, investment accounts, business records, everything. What about the joint accounts? We'll deal with those, but right now I need you to secure whatever you can. Can you transfer money without his approval? Yes. Most of my accounts are still in my name only. I never combined everything because my accountant said it was better for tax purposes. Thank God for smart accountants. Get to my office now. I drove straight downtown, my mind racing through everything Ryan had said. He'd been planning this for months, moving his own money around, setting me up. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated me. And ladies, let me tell you, that's always a fatal error. David's office was in one of those sleek high-rises that cost more per month in rent than most people's mortgages. His assistant ushered me into his conference room immediately, where David was already waiting with his laptop open and legal pads spread across the table. The man takes financial warfare seriously. Tell me everything, he said without preamble. Word for word, exactly what you heard. I recounted the entire conversation, watching David's expression grow more serious with each detail. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. Your husband is either very smart or very stupid, he said. The good news is that most of what he's planning is based on assumptions that aren't necessarily true. What do you mean? The prenup, for starters. You said he claimed it would protect both your assets equally? Yes. That's what his lawyer told us. David pulled up the document on his laptop and scrolled through it quickly. This is interesting. The language here is actually pretty standard, but Ryan's interpretation is wrong. This prenup protects what you each brought into the marriage, but it doesn't give either party automatic rights to the other's assets. Relief flooded through me. So he can't take half my money? Not automatically, no. But Zoe, there's something else. You said he got you to add his name to your house deed? My heart sank. Yes, about 2 months ago. He said it was romantic, that married couples should own things together. That's going to be more complicated. When did you buy the house? 3 years ago, 2 years before I met Ryan. David made notes on his legal pad. Okay, we can work with this. But we need to move fast. If he's planning to file for divorce soon, we need to protect whatever we can before he makes his move. What do I need to do? First, we're going to transfer every penny you can access into new accounts that only you control. Then we're going to document everything, every asset you owned before the marriage, every contribution you made to joint expenses, every detail we can use to prove what's rightfully yours. Is that legal? Absolutely. You're protecting your own assets from someone who's planning to take them through deception. That's not theft, Zoe. That's self-defense. We spent the next few hours moving money. David had connections at several banks, and we were able to open new accounts and transfer funds electronically. My business accounts were easy since they were solely in my name. My personal savings took more work, but by the time we finished, I'd moved over $200,000 into accounts Ryan didn't even know existed. The house was more complicated. Since Ryan's name was on the deed, we couldn't just transfer it. But David had a plan for that too. Because when you're dealing with financial predators, you need a lawyer who thinks like one. We're going to file a motion claiming the addition of his name to the deed was done under false pretenses, he explained. You can prove you bought the house before the marriage, that you paid all the mortgage payments, and that he convinced you to add his name through deception. Will that work? It's going to be a fight. But yes, I think we have a strong case, especially if we can prove he was planning this divorce while he was convincing you to add his name to the deed. As we wrapped up, David gave me one final piece of advice. Go home and act normal. Don't let him suspect anything has changed. In a few days, when he serves you with divorce papers, you're going to act surprised and hurt. Can you do that? I thought about Ryan's smug voice as he described how stupid I was. Oh, I can definitely do that. Because if there's one thing I learned in business, it's that the best revenge is letting your opponent think they're winning right up until the moment you destroy them. And ladies, Ryan was about to get a masterclass in why you should never underestimate a woman with her own money and a really good lawyer. Have you ever had to pretend everything was fine while your entire world was falling apart? Drop a comment below about a time you had to put on a brave face when everything was chaos behind the scenes. Walking back into my house that evening was like entering a movie set. Everything looked the same, but now I knew it was all an elaborate performance. Ryan was in the kitchen making dinner, humming softly to himself, probably celebrating his brilliant plan with Marcus earlier. And honestly, ladies, the audacity was breathtaking. "Hey, babe," he said when I walked in, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "How was work? You look tired." The audacity was breathtaking. This man was planning to destroy my life financially, and he was asking about my day like a caring husband. I had to admire the commitment to the role. "Really? Just the usual chaos," I replied, hanging up my jacket. "Something smells good. Thought I'd make your favorite pasta. We should enjoy these quiet evenings together while we can." While we can. Even his casual comments had double meanings now. Everything was subtext with this man. We ate dinner like we had hundreds of times before. Ryan asked about my clients, shared funny stories from his day, complimented the wine I'd picked out the week before. He was playing the role of devoted husband perfectly, and I found myself almost admiring his acting skills. He really should have gone into theater instead of financial fraud. "I was thinking," Ryan said as we cleared the dishes, "maybe we should take a weekend trip soon, just the two of us. Things have been so busy lately." "That sounds nice," I said, loading the dishwasher. "Where were you thinking?" "Maybe that bed and breakfast up the coast you liked. The one with the amazing view." The same bed and breakfast where he'd proposed 6 months ago. I wondered if this was part of his strategy, creating romantic final memories before he destroyed me. Or maybe he just enjoyed the irony. With Ryan, it was hard to tell. That weekend felt like the longest 48 hours of my life. Ryan was attentive and affectionate, and I had to constantly remind myself that it was all fake. Every kiss, every sweet gesture, every "I love you" was just him playing his part while he waited for the right moment to strike. It was like being married to a sociopath, except less honest. Monday morning came with a text from David. "Everything's in place on our end, now we wait." I didn't have to wait long, because apparently Ryan was eager to get this show on the road. Tuesday afternoon, I was in a client meeting when my assistant knocked on my conference room door. "Zoe, there's someone here to see you, says it's urgent." The process server was young, probably fresh out of college, and he looked uncomfortable as he handed me the manila envelope. "Zoe Thompson, these are for you." My hands were steady as I signed the receipt, but my heart was pounding. Even though I knew this was coming, seeing those divorce papers felt surreal. It's one thing to know your husband wants to rob you. It's another to have the legal documents proving it. I waited until the process server left, then excused myself from my client meeting. "Family emergency," I told them, which wasn't entirely untrue. Alone in my office, I opened the envelope and read through the documents. Ryan was asking for exactly what he'd told Marcus he would: half of all marital assets, including the house. His lawyer had been thorough, listing every account, every investment, even my business as potential shared property. The man who'd told me he loved my independence was now claiming that my business success was partially due to his emotional and practical support during our marriage. I actually laughed out loud at that part. Emotional support? The man couldn't even remember my birthday without a calendar reminder. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Hope you're having a good day, beautiful. Can't wait to see you tonight." The sheer manipulation was almost impressive. He was probably expecting me to come home in tears, devastated and confused, ready to accept whatever settlement his lawyer offered. You know, like a good little victim. Instead, I texted back, "Can't wait to see you too." I left work early and stopped at the grocery store, buying ingredients for Ryan's favorite meal. If he wanted to play games, I could play games too. And ladies, I was about to show him what happens when you underestimate someone who's spent years negotiating with difficult clients. When Ryan got home that evening, I was in the kitchen with dinner almost ready, and the divorce papers nowhere to be seen. "This smells incredible," he said, kissing my neck. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice for my husband." We ate dinner, making small talk about our days. Ryan seemed relaxed, probably figuring I hadn't been served yet or that I was in denial about what was happening. Poor man had no idea he was about to get schooled. Finally, as we finished dessert, I stood up and walked to my purse. "Oh, I almost forgot. Someone dropped this off at my office today." I placed the manila envelope on the table between us. Ryan's expression shifted from confusion to concern, to what looked like genuine surprise. "Really, Ryan? You're going to act shocked by your own divorce papers?" "What is it?" he asked, though we both knew he knew exactly what it was. "Divorce papers," I said simply, sitting back down. "Apparently, you want to end our marriage." Ryan reached for the envelope, his acting kicking back in. "Zoe, I can explain." "Actually," I interrupted, "you don't need to explain anything. I'll sign them." His mouth fell open. This clearly wasn't the reaction he'd prepared for. "You'll sign them?" "Sure. If you want out of this marriage badly enough to have me served with papers, then you obviously don't want to be married to me. I'm not going to beg someone to stay who doesn't want to be here." I could see him recalibrating, trying to figure out why this was going so easily. This wasn't part of his script, and it was throwing him off his game. "Zoe, maybe we should talk about this. Maybe we can work things out." "No, Ryan. You've made your choice. I'll have my lawyer review these and get them back to you in a few days." I stood up and started clearing the dinner plates, acting like we'd just discussed vacation plans instead of the end of our marriage. Because honestly, after everything I'd heard him say about me, this marriage had been over for a while. I was just making it official. "Where will you go?" he asked, and I could hear the satisfaction creeping into his voice. He thought he was about to win everything. "Oh, I'll figure something out. I'm resourceful." That night, Ryan slept in the guest room, claiming he needed space to think. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, knowing this would be one of the last nights I'd spend in this house for a while. But unlike Ryan, I wasn't worried about where I'd go or how I'd survive, because while he'd been planning his strategy for months, I'd executed mine in hours, and he had no idea what was coming. Sometimes the best part of chess isn't winning, ladies. It's watching your opponent realize they never had a chance. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of false normalcy that feels like the calm before a tornado. Ryan was up early, making coffee and toast, acting like the devoted soon-to-be ex-husband who was trying to be civil during our separation. You know, the kind of performance that deserves an Oscar for Best Actor in a financial fraud drama. "I was thinking," he said as I poured my coffee, "maybe I should stay at Marcus's place for a few days. Give us both some space while we figure this out." Translation: give me time to move into a hotel while you come to terms with losing everything and become desperate enough to accept my terrible settlement offer. "That sounds reasonable," I replied. Stirring sugar into my cup. "Take whatever you need." I went to work and spent the morning in meetings, acting like my personal life wasn't imploding. Around noon, I got a text from Ryan. "Heading over to grab some clothes and stuff. Don't want to bother you at work." "No problem. Take care." David called me an hour later, and I could hear the grin in his voice. "It's done. I filed your response to the divorce petition this morning, along with our counterclaims. Ryan's lawyer should be getting the paperwork right about now." "What exactly did we claim?" "Everything we discussed. Full ownership of the house based on your premarital purchase and sole financial responsibility for it. Protection of your business assets as separate property. And here's my favorite part. We're asking for spousal support." I nearly choked on my coffee. Spousal support? Hey, if he wants to play hardball, we'll play hardball. You're the higher earner in this marriage. Technically, you could make a case that he's entitled to support. But I don't actually want his money. Of course not. But asking for it sends a message that you're not the helpless victim he thinks you are. Around 3 o'clock, my phone started ringing. Ryan's name flashed on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again, and again, and again. Someone was clearly having a very bad day, and it wasn't me. The fourth time, I answered with fake cheerfulness. "Hi, honey. What's up?" "What's up?" His voice was strained, barely controlled. "What the hell did you do, Zoe?" "I'm sorry. What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb with me. My lawyer just called. You're claiming the house is yours and asking for spousal support? What kind of game are you playing?" I could hear Marcus in the background asking what was wrong. Ryan shushed him sharply. Drama in paradise, apparently. "I'm not playing any game, Ryan. I just had my lawyer respond to your divorce petition. Isn't that how this works? This isn't what we discussed. We never discussed anything. You served me with divorce papers. I had no idea you wanted a divorce until yesterday. Ladies, never underestimate the power of playing dumb when your opponent is having a meltdown. There was a long pause. I could practically hear him trying to figure out how to salvage his plan. Look, maybe I was hasty. Maybe we should try counseling or something. This doesn't have to be adversarial. Oh, but I think it does. I let some steel creep into my voice. You want a divorce, Ryan? You made that very clear. So we're getting divorced. Zoe, let's be reasonable here. You know I don't have the kind of money to pay spousal support. Really? That's interesting. Because according to your own divorce filing, you're claiming half of my assets. If you think you're entitled to half of what I have, why wouldn't I be entitled to support from you? Another long pause. Can we please just talk about this in person? Face to face, like adults? I don't think that's a good idea. My lawyer advised me to handle everything through proper legal channels from now on. And honestly, after hearing what he really thought of me, the last thing I wanted was to sit across from him and pretend we could work this out like reasonable people. I hung up before he could respond, then immediately called David. He's panicking, I reported. Called 4 times in a row, then tried to backtrack on the divorce. Good. That means our strategy is working. But Zoe, be prepared. Things are probably going to get ugly now. David was right. By evening, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Ryan. The tone started pleading and quickly escalated to angry. You can't just steal what's rightfully mine. I know what you're trying to pull, and it won't work. This is why people warned me about successful women. You think you can control everything. That last text made me laugh. People warned him about successful women? Please, more like people should warn successful women about broke men with expensive taste and flexible morals. Around 9 p.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Ryan standing on my porch, holding a bottle of wine and flowers. He'd clearly decided to try the romantic approach. How sweet. Nothing says I'm sorry I tried to rob you like cheap flowers and wine. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Peace offering? He said, holding up the wine. I think we got off on the wrong foot today. Ryan, you filed for divorce. There is no wrong foot. There's just divorce. Come on. Zoe, we both said things we didn't mean. Can't we work this out like civilized people? I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was trying to charm his way back into my good graces so he could restart his plan from a better position. Unfortunately for him, I was no longer charmed by men who planned to steal from me. You know what would be civilized? I said sweetly. Honoring the legal agreements you signed. Your lawyer drew up the divorce papers. My lawyer responded to them. That's how civilized people handle divorce. But you're asking for spousal support from me. You make 3 times what I make. And yet you think you're entitled to half of my assets. Funny how money works, isn't it? His mask finally slipped completely. This is ridiculous, Zoe. You know damn well that house should be half mine. I've been paying the utilities, I've been maintaining it. Have you now? I interrupted. Because I have records showing that every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every maintenance expense has come from my accounts. But please feel free to provide documentation of all these contributions you've made. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. We both knew he couldn't document contributions he'd never made. My lawyer will be in touch, he said finally. The charm completely gone now. I'm sure he will. After he left, I poured myself a glass of that wine he'd brought. It was expensive, probably more than he usually spent. I wondered if he'd charged it to one of those secret accounts he'd been bragging about to Marcus. The irony was delicious. My phone buzzed with a text from David. How are you holding up? I'm excellent. Ready for round 2. Because if Ryan wanted to play dirty, he was about to discover that I'd learned from the best teachers in the business world. And unlike him, I didn't underestimate my opponents. That's rule number 1 in business, ladies. Never assume your competition is stupid. Ryan was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Thursday morning brought an unexpected gift. Marcus called me directly. And honestly, I was not expecting this plot twist. Zoe, it's Marcus, Ryan's friend. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I think we need to talk. My pulse quickened. This was either Ryan sending his friend to manipulate me, or something else entirely. Either way, it was about to get interesting. What about Marcus? Look, I know this is weird, but I feel like I owe you an explanation about what happened Friday. When Ryan was talking about the divorce stuff, I nearly dropped my coffee cup. Marcus wanted to confess? This was not on my bingo card for today, but I was here for it. I'm listening. Can we meet somewhere? I don't feel comfortable doing this over the phone. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, far from anywhere Ryan might see us. When I arrived, Marcus was already there, looking uncomfortable and guilty. And honestly, good. He should feel guilty. I want to be clear about something, he started before I'd even sat down. I told Ryan his plan was messed up. I told him he was wrong for doing this to you. But you didn't try to stop him. What was I supposed to do? He's my friend, but this whole thing made me sick to my stomach. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The thing is, I can't live with knowing this and not saying anything. My wife would kill me if she found out I knew about this and stayed quiet. Ah, there it was. Marcus wasn't confessing out of pure moral obligation. His wife had gotten wind of the situation and made him choose between his conscience and his marriage. Smart woman. Marcus explained that Ryan had been planning the divorce for months, ever since he'd gotten access to my financial information when I'd added him to the house deed. He saw how much money you had, and it changed him. He started talking about how he deserved better, how he shouldn't have to work when he was married to someone rich. He told you all this? Ryan tells me everything. Way more than I want to know, honestly. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Look, Zoe, there's something else you need to know. Ryan's been talking to other women. The betrayal stung, even though I was already divorcing him. Anyone I know? Some girl from his gym. He's been telling her he's unhappily married to a controlling wife who won't let him be himself. I laughed bitterly. Controlling? I literally never told him what to do. Unless you count asking him to put his dishes in the dishwasher as controlling, which, knowing Ryan, he probably did. That's what I said. You were always cool when I hung out at your place. You never complained when Ryan went out with us. But he's been rewriting history, making you sound like some kind of villain. Marcus fidgeted with his coffee cup. The thing is, he's been promising this girl that he'll be free soon. And rich. He told her he was going to walk away from his marriage with enough money to buy a house and start over. With my money. Yeah, and Zoe? He's not the only one who knows about your financial situation. He's been bragging to people about how much his wife is worth. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of people? His cousin Derek, for one. Derek's always looking for quick money schemes. And some guys from Ryan's poker game. Ryan's been talking about this divorce like it's his lottery ticket. This was worse than I'd thought. Ryan hadn't just been planning to steal from me. He'd been advertising my wealth to other people who might see me as a target. Because apparently, financial fraud is a team sport now. There's something else, Marcus continued. Ryan thinks you're going to fold easily because you're too nice to fight dirty. He's telling everyone you'll probably settle out of court to avoid drama. Is that what he thinks? That's what he's counting on. His whole strategy depends on you being too polite or too scared to really fight back. I smiled for the first time during our conversation. Marcus, can I ask you a favor? Sure. Don't tell Ryan we talked. Let him keep thinking I'm going to be easy to manipulate. Why? Because it's going to make what happens next so much more satisfying. After Marcus left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking through everything he'd told me. Ryan wasn't just trying to steal my money. He was actively undermining my reputation and potentially putting me in danger by bragging about my assets to questionable people. And that, ladies, was where he crossed the line from petty theft to something much more serious. I called David immediately. We need to escalate this, I told him. Ryan's been discussing my financial information with multiple people, including his cousin who apparently has a history of money schemes. That's a violation of privacy and potentially financial harassment. We can use that. There's more. He's been having an affair and telling the other woman that he's going to be rich soon. Even better, adultery might not affect the divorce settlement in our state, but it definitely affects his credibility in court. And David, I want to do something that will really get his attention. What did you have in mind? How quickly can we freeze the joint accounts? There was a pause. Technically, since your name is on them too, you have every right to restrict access. I can file an emergency motion claiming you need to protect marital assets from being hidden or dissipated. Do it. Zoe, are you sure? This is going to make him very angry. I thought about Ryan bragging to his poker buddies about my money, promising his girlfriend that he'd be rich soon, calling me too stupid to see what was coming. But most of all, I thought about him putting me at risk by advertising my wealth to criminals and con artists. David, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. By 5 o'clock that afternoon, every joint account we had was frozen pending court review. Ryan's credit cards, which were linked to my accounts, were deactivated. His access to our shared savings was cut off completely. I was sitting in my office when my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen, and this time his voice was pure fury. What the hell did you do to my accounts? They're not your accounts, Ryan. They're our joint accounts, and I protected them from being manipulated during our divorce proceedings. You can't do this. I need that money for basic expenses. Really? I thought you had your own money set aside. You know, those accounts you've been moving money to for months? Silence. He'd never told me about those accounts, and now he knew that I knew about them. Zoe, this is insane. You're being vindictive. I'm being careful. There's a difference. My lawyer is going to hear about this. I'm sure he will. My lawyer filed all the paperwork already. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Complete control over my own life. Ryan thought he'd married a nice, naive woman who would roll over and let him take whatever he wanted. Tomorrow, he was going to start learning just how wrong he'd been about me. And honestly, I couldn't wait. What would you do if you discovered someone you trusted was planning to steal everything from you? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button if you're ready to see how this story unfolds. Friday morning brought the sound I'd been waiting for. Ryan's key fumbling frantically at our front door. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop and a cup of coffee, pretending to work while actually watching security footage from my phone app. And ladies, the entertainment value was about to be off the charts. He burst through the door like a man on fire. And honestly, that's pretty much what he was. Zoe, where are you? His voice echoed through the house, sharp with panic. Kitchen, I called back calmly, like he was just asking about breakfast plans. Ryan appeared in the doorway, his hair disheveled, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His eyes were wild, and I could smell stale alcohol on him from across the room. Someone had been drowning his sorrows. Apparently. My credit card was declined at the hotel, he said without preamble. The ATM won't give me cash. What did you do? I looked up from my laptop with carefully practiced confusion. I'm sorry. What? Don't play dumb with me. He slammed his hand on the counter. You did something to my access to our money. Ryan, you filed for divorce. You moved out. Why would you still have access to my accounts? I asked this like it was the most reasonable question in the world, which it was. They're not your accounts. They're our accounts. Actually, I said, pulling up my banking app. Let me check something. I scrolled through the screen, making a show of reading carefully. That's interesting. It looks like when I reviewed our finances after you served me with divorce papers, I discovered some irregularities. His face went pale. What kind of irregularities? Well, for example, there were several large transfers to accounts I don't recognize. Money being moved around without my knowledge or consent. I tilted my head innocently. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Ryan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He knew I'd caught him, but he couldn't figure out how much I actually knew. The suspense was killing him. And honestly, I was enjoying every second of it. I was reorganizing some investments. Oh, reorganizing! How thoughtful of you to handle my investments without mentioning it. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Don't worry. My lawyer helped me protect everything while we sort out this divorce. You know, to make sure no marital assets disappear during the proceedings. You can't do this to me, Zoe. I have expenses. I need money for basic living costs. I'm sure you do. Have you considered getting a job? Because apparently that revolutionary concept hadn't occurred to him yet. The look on his face was priceless. Like I'd suggested he grow wings and fly to the moon. I have a job. Do you? Because when I called your office yesterday to let them know you might need some time off for our divorce proceedings, they told me you haven't been in the office for 3 weeks. Another lie exposed. Ryan had been telling me he was working while actually spending his days planning my financial destruction and apparently drinking with Marcus. I've been working from home. Really? Doing what exactly? I was genuinely curious at this point. He couldn't answer because we both knew he'd been too busy plotting against me to actually work. My phone buzzed with a text. Ryan's eyes immediately went to it, probably hoping it was some kind of lifeline. Oh, that's my lawyer, I said, glancing at the screen. He wants to know if you've found representation yet. Apparently your lawyer dropped you? He didn't drop me. There was just a misunderstanding about payment. Ah, right. Hard to pay legal fees when all your secret accounts are suddenly under court review. I stood up and poured myself another cup of coffee, because this conversation was far from over. Ryan stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. The helpless, trusting wife he'd married was nowhere to be found. And honestly, good riddance. She was exhausting. This isn't over, Zoe. You're absolutely right, I agreed cheerfully. We still have to divide up your assets. I'm particularly interested in that BMW you're so proud of. My lawyer thinks I might be entitled to half its value. That car is mine. I bought it before we got married. With what money? Because according to my research, you were pretty much broke when we met. So either you got a very generous loan, or someone helped you buy it. Either way, we'll figure it out in court. And ladies, this is where his careful house of lies started tumbling down. Ryan turned and stormed toward the door, then stopped and spun back around. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've started. Actually, Ryan, you started this when you decided to steal from me. I'm just finishing it. After he left, I called David to update him on Ryan's meltdown. He's getting desperate, David observed. That's when people make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Threatening behavior, mostly. Maybe trying to intimidate you. If he does anything that makes you feel unsafe, document everything and call me immediately. I'm not scared of Ryan. Good. But be careful anyway. Desperate people do unpredictable things. David was right to be concerned, but not for the reasons he thought. I wasn't afraid of what Ryan might do to me. I was afraid of what I might do to him if he pushed me much further. Because, ladies, there's only so much financial manipulation and general stupidity a successful woman can tolerate before she starts getting creative with her revenge. What do you think will happen next? Will Ryan try to intimidate Zoe? Or will he attempt a different strategy? Drop your predictions in the comments below. Saturday brought an unexpected visitor, Ryan's mother, Patricia. I was in my home office when the doorbell rang, and when I looked through the peephole, there she was, standing on my porch with a casserole dish and a determined expression. And honestly, ladies, I knew this was going to be interesting. Patricia had always been polite to me, but distant. She'd made it clear from the beginning that she thought Ryan was marrying beneath his social status. The irony of that attitude, considering I was the one with money, had never been lost on me. But apparently, desperation makes strange bedfellows. I opened the door with a bright smile. Patricia, what a surprise. Hello, dear. I brought you some food. I know this divorce business must be so stressful for you. She pushed past me into the house before I could object, heading straight for the kitchen like she owned the place. Because nothing says family bonding like a forced casserole delivery during a hostile divorce. That's very thoughtful, I said, following her. How did you know I was here? I thought Ryan was staying with you. Oh, he is. Poor boy is just devastated about all this. She set the casserole on my counter and turned to face me with practiced maternal concern. Zoe, can we have an honest conversation? Of course. Ryan told me about the money situation. How you've cut off his access to everything. She shook her head sadly. I know you're hurt and angry, but don't you think you're being a bit vindictive? I leaned against my counter, studying her face. Patricia, did Ryan tell you why we're getting divorced? He said you two just grew apart, different life goals. Interesting. So Ryan hadn't told his mother that he'd filed the divorce papers, or that he'd been planning to take half my assets. He'd painted himself as the victim of marital discord instead of the architect of financial fraud. That's one way to put it, I said neutrally. The thing is, dear, Ryan's always been a bit impractical about money. He doesn't handle financial stress well. This whole situation has him quite upset. I can imagine. Patricia moved closer, her voice becoming more confidential. Between you and me, I think he's learned his lesson. Maybe if you could just give him some small allowance while you work things out. Nothing major, just enough for basic expenses. And there it was. Ryan had sent his mother to manipulate me into giving him money. Because apparently financial desperation is a family trait. Patricia, can I ask you something? Did Ryan ever mention how much money he was planning to get from our divorce? Her expression shifted slightly. Well, he mentioned that as his wife, he might be entitled to some portion of the marital assets. Half, actually. He was planning to take half of everything I own. Patricia's eyes widened. Oh, I'm sure that's not... He wouldn't... Including this house, which I bought 2 years before I met him. But surely he contributed to the mortgage payments. Not a penny. I have all the bank records if you'd like to see them. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of every mortgage payment, utility bill, and home expense from the past year. All paid from my accounts, because Ryan's idea of contributing was using my Wi-Fi. Patricia stared at the screen, her confident demeanor beginning to crack. I don't understand, she said finally. Ryan told me he'd been supporting you, helping with the household expenses. Patricia, did you know that Ryan hasn't been to work in 3 weeks? That's impossible. He leaves every morning. He's been spending his days planning how to take my money and hide his own assets. Would you like to see the bank records showing how he's been secretly moving money around? I showed her more screenshots. Transfers to accounts I'd never seen before, patterns of financial deception going back months. Patricia's face went through several emotions, finally settling on something between shock and disappointment. Patricia sank into one of my kitchen chairs, looking genuinely shocked. I had no idea, she whispered. He told me you were being unreasonable, that you were trying to leave him with nothing. The opposite is true. Ryan planned this divorce specifically to take half my money while protecting his own assets. He was bragging to his friends about how stupid I was, how I'd never see it coming. For a long moment, Patricia sat in silence, staring at my phone screen. When she looked up, her expression had completely changed. I owe you an apology, Zoe. I came here thinking you were being cruel to my son. I had no idea he was... She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Trying to steal from me? Yes. She stood up, smoothing down her skirt. I should go. Patricia, wait. Can I ask you something else? She nodded, looking resigned to whatever bombshell was coming next. Has Ryan ever done anything like this before? With previous relationships? Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. There was a girl in college, she said quietly. Sarah. Her family had money. Ryan dated her for about a year, and when they broke up, there was some confusion about a car he'd been driving. Sarah's father thought Ryan was supposed to return it, but Ryan claimed it was a gift. What happened? Sarah's father threatened legal action. Ryan eventually gave the car back. But, she shrugged helplessly, I thought it was just a misunderstanding between young people. And there were others? A few. Ryan has always been attracted to successful women. I thought it was because he was ambitious, but now... She looked around my kitchen, taking in the expensive appliances, the granite countertops, the clear signs of wealth. Now I'm wondering if I was wrong about his motivations. Ladies, there's nothing quite like watching a mother realize her son is a professional gold digger. It's heartbreaking and validating at the same time. After Patricia left, I called David with an update. His own mother just confirmed that he has a pattern of targeting women with money, I reported. This isn't his first attempt at financial manipulation. That's excellent information for our case. It establishes a pattern of behavior. David, I want to do something that will really send a message. What did you have in mind? How quickly can we file a motion for him to account for all the money he's moved around? Make him explain where every penny went? We can do that this week. But Zoe, are you sure you want to escalate further? He's already panicking. I thought about Patricia's revelation, about Ryan's history of targeting successful women and manipulating them for financial gain. I thought about all the other women who might fall for his act if he didn't face real consequences. I'm sure. It's time Ryan learned that some women fight back. And honestly, it was time someone taught him that actions have consequences, even for charming con artists with disappointed mothers. Monday morning brought the sound of my doorbell at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I could see Ryan pacing on my porch, holding what looked like legal documents. And honestly, ladies, there's something deeply satisfying about watching someone panic at the consequences of their own actions. I opened the door wearing my robe and slippers, coffee cup in hand, the picture of casual morning routine. Ryan, you're up early. We need to talk. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Can I come in? Actually, I'd prefer if we kept this conversation on the porch. What's so urgent? He held up the papers with shaking hands. Your lawyer is demanding I account for every financial transaction I've made in the past year. That's insane. Zoe, that's harassment. I sipped my coffee thoughtfully. Is it? Because it seems like reasonable discovery to me. If you've been moving money around without my knowledge, don't I have the right to know where it went? It's my money. I can do whatever I want with it. If it's your money, then documenting it should be simple. Just show the court your bank statements and investment records. Problem solved. I made it sound so reasonable because it was. Ryan ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. You don't understand. Some of those transactions, they're complicated. Complicated how? I made some investments. High-risk stuff. Some of them didn't work out. Translation. He'd gambled away money and lost. Because of course he had. Investments in what? Cryptocurrency mostly. And some poker games that Marcus recommended. I nearly choked on my coffee. Poker games? Oh, this just kept getting better. Look, I know how it sounds, but these weren't just random bets. These were calculated investments in high-stakes games with serious players. By serious players, do you mean people who are better at poker than you are? I made some bad calls, okay? But I thought I could make enough to provide better for us. By gambling with money you'd stolen from our joint accounts? I didn't steal anything. That money was mine to use. Ryan, you took money from accounts that I funded entirely, gambled it away in poker games, and then planned to divorce me and take half my remaining assets to cover your losses. How is that not theft? I asked this like I was genuinely curious about his logic, which honestly, I was. He stared at me, probably realizing for the first time that I understood the full scope of what he'd been doing. Zoe, I messed up, I know that. But if you just give me some time, I can fix this. I can pay back what I lost. With what money? I'll get a job. A real job. I'll work overtime. I'll do whatever it takes. It was almost pathetic, watching him scramble for solutions to problems he'd created through his own greed and stupidity. Almost. That's very noble of you, Ryan. But here's the thing. I'm not your bank. I'm not your investment partner. I'm not even your wife anymore. Really. I'm just someone you tried to steal from who's now protecting herself through legal channels. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I considered the question seriously. You know what I'm enjoying? Finally understanding who I married. For months, I thought I was losing my mind, thinking you were acting strange. Now I know you were just planning to rob me. It's actually a relief to know I wasn't paranoid. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Court date set for Friday. Full hearing on asset protection and financial disclosure. Oh, good, I said, reading the message. We have a court date, Friday at 10 a.m. Day at 9. You'll want to bring all those bank statements and investment records we talked about. Ryan's face went white. Court? Did you think we were going to settle this over coffee on my porch? You filed for divorce, demanded half my assets, and then hid your own money in gambling debts. Of course we're going to court. Zoe, please, can't we work something out? Just between us? What exactly are you proposing? I'll drop all claims to your assets. The house, your business, everything. I'll walk away and we can just end this quietly. And what about the money you already took from our joint accounts? He shifted uncomfortably. That's more complicated. Because you don't have it anymore. Some of it. I lost some of it. But I can pay it back over time. I set my coffee cup down on the porch railing and looked at him seriously. Ryan, let me explain something to you. I'm not interested in your payment plan. I'm not interested in your promises. I'm interested in justice. You tried to steal from me and now you're going to face the consequences. This is about revenge, isn't it? No, this is about accountability. You made calculated decisions to deceive me, steal from me, and destroy our marriage for financial gain. Now you get to explain those decisions to a judge. My lawyer says you're being vindictive, that no reasonable person would pursue this so aggressively. I smiled. Your lawyer is probably right. A reasonable person might just be grateful to escape a marriage to a con artist and cut their losses. But Ryan, I've never been accused of being reasonable when someone tries to take what's mine. And honestly, ladies, there's something liberating about embracing your inner unreasonable woman when someone's trying to rob you blind. After he left, I called David to confirm our preparation for Friday's hearing. Do we have everything we need? I asked. We have bank records showing his secret transfers, documentation of his employment lies, testimony from his friend Marcus about the planning conversation you overheard, and now his own admission that he gambled away money from your accounts. And his mother's information about his history with other women? That too. Zoe, this isn't going to be a close case. Ryan's lawyer is going to advise him to settle. What if he doesn't want to settle? Then we go to trial and he loses everything in a very public way. His choice. Friday couldn't come soon enough. It was time for Ryan to learn that some women don't just roll over and accept being robbed. And honestly, I was looking forward to watching him explain his investment strategy to a judge. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A navy blue suit that conveyed professionalism and competence, paired with jewelry that suggested success without ostentation. If we were going to court, I wanted the judge to see exactly what kind of woman Ryan had tried to manipulate. David met me in the courthouse lobby at 9:30, carrying a briefcase that I knew contained enough evidence to bury Ryan's case completely. How are you feeling? He asked as we walked toward the courtroom. Ready, I said simply. And honestly, ladies, I'd never meant anything more in my life. Good. Remember, let me do the talking unless the judge asks you a direct question. Ryan's lawyer is probably going to try to paint you as vindictive or controlling. And if he does, then we'll show the court exactly what you were protecting yourself from. When we entered the courtroom, Ryan was already there with his new lawyer, a young man who looked fresh out of law school and uncomfortable with the case he'd inherited. Ryan had cleaned up since our porch conversation, wearing a suit that I recognized as one I'd bought him for job interviews. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even his court attire was purchased with my money. Judge Martinez called the case, and David stood to present our motion first. Your Honor, this case involves a clear pattern of financial manipulation and deception by the respondent. Mrs. Thompson discovered that her husband had been secretly moving marital assets while planning a divorce specifically designed to enrich himself at her expense. David laid out the timeline methodically. Ryan's employment deception, the secret account transfers, the gambling losses, and the conversation I'd overheard about his plan to leave me without even a house to live in. Furthermore, David continued, we have evidence that Mr. Thompson has a history of targeting financially successful women for romantic relationships that benefit him materially. Ryan's lawyer objected, but Judge Martinez allowed David to continue. The respondent's own mother confirmed that he had similar issues with previous relationships involving financial disputes over gifts and shared assets. When it was time for Ryan's lawyer to respond, the young man stood up nervously. You could practically smell the desperation from across the courtroom. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that some poor financial decisions were made during the marriage. However, Mrs. Thompson's response has been disproportionate and punitive. Freezing all joint accounts and demanding detailed accounting of personal investments goes beyond reasonable asset protection. What personal investments? Judge Martinez asked pointedly. Ryan's lawyer shuffled his papers. Various cryptocurrency purchases and recreational gaming activities. Gaming activities? Poker, Your Honor. Judge Martinez looked directly at Ryan with the kind of expression that could freeze hell. Mr. Thompson, are you telling this court that you used money from joint marital accounts to gamble? Ryan stood up, against his lawyer's obvious wishes. Your Honor, those weren't random bets. These were calculated investments in high-stakes games with serious players. Sit down, Judge Martinez said sharply, and let your lawyer speak for you. But the damage was done. Ryan had just admitted under oath that he'd gambled with marital funds. And ladies, there's nothing quite like watching someone incriminate themselves in real time. David requested permission to present evidence, and for the next hour, we laid out everything. Bank statements showing Ryan's transfers to hidden accounts. Employment records proving he'd been lying about working. Marcus's signed statement about the conversation where Ryan bragged about his plan. Even Patricia's testimony about Ryan's history of financial manipulation in relationships. By the time we finished, Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. His lawyer kept shooting him warning looks, probably realizing this case was unwinnable. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence for several minutes before speaking. Mr. Thompson, I've seen a lot of divorce cases in my career, but this level of calculated deception is unusual. You systematically moved marital assets, lied to your wife about your employment status, and used joint funds for gambling while planning a divorce that would have given you access to her separate property. Ryan's lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge held up his hand. I'm not finished. Mrs. Thompson, your response to discovering this deception was swift and comprehensive. Some might call it aggressive, but given what you were protecting yourself from, I'd call it prudent. He looked at Ryan again with barely concealed disgust. Mr. Thompson, you filed for divorce seeking half of your wife's assets. Based on the evidence presented today, not only are you not entitled to any of Mrs. Thompson's separate property, but you owe the marital estate approximately $47,000 for funds you removed and lost to gambling. Your Honor, Ryan's lawyer stood up desperately. My client is prepared to waive all claims to Mrs. Thompson's assets in exchange for a clean break. That's not how this works, Judge Martinez replied coldly. Mr. Thompson depleted marital assets through gambling. Those funds need to be restored. I watched Ryan's face go through a range of emotions. Shock, panic, and finally, desperate anger. This is insane, he burst out, standing up again. She's the one with all the money. She can afford to lose $47,000. Mr. Thompson? Judge Martinez's voice was sharp. You will sit down and remain quiet, or you will be removed from this courtroom. Ryan sat down, but I could see him shaking with rage. And honestly, the audacity was breathtaking. Even facing complete legal defeat, he still thought he was entitled to my money, Judge Martinez continued. Given the evidence of Mr. Thompson's deceptive behavior and misuse of marital funds, I'm granting Mrs. Thompson's motion for asset protection. All joint accounts will remain under her sole control pending full resolution of this divorce. He paused, looking directly at Ryan. Additionally, Mr. Thompson will be required to provide a complete accounting of all financial transactions for the past 18 months, including the source and disposition of all funds. This court will determine what assets, if any, can be recovered to compensate the marital estate. As we left the courthouse, I could hear Ryan arguing loudly with his lawyer in the hallway behind us. Something about appealing the decision and judicial bias. Good luck with that, honey. How much can they actually make him pay? I asked David as we walked to his car. Potentially everything he has left. That BMW he's so proud of. Any remaining money in those secret accounts. Even future wages if necessary. I thought about Ryan's expression when the judge ordered him to account for every transaction he'd made in 18 months. He's going to be furious. Let him be furious. The law is on our side now. But as David drove me home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan's fury was going to manifest in ways that had nothing to do with the law. And ladies, I was absolutely right about that. Saturday evening, I was in my home office reviewing some client proposals when my security system alert went off. Someone was in my driveway. I checked the camera feed and saw Ryan's BMW parked behind my car, blocking me in. And honestly, the symbolism wasn't lost on me. He was still trying to trap me even after losing spectacularly in court. This was new. Ryan had never been aggressive before, just manipulative. But after yesterday's court hearing, maybe his mask was finally coming off completely. I heard the front door rattle, then the sound of a key turning. He still had his house key. I'd been meaning to change the locks, but hadn't gotten around to it yet. Big mistake, ladies. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them and change your locks immediately. Zoe! Ryan's voice echoed through the house. We need to talk. I could hear him moving through the downstairs rooms, checking the kitchen, the living room. His footsteps were heavy, angry. This wasn't the charming manipulator I'd married. This was someone who'd lost control and was desperately trying to get it back. I know you're here. Your car's in the garage. I quietly locked my office door and called David first, then 911. I whispered my address and situation to the operator, who assured me police were on their way. Zoe! Ryan's voice was closer now, coming up the stairs. Stop hiding from me. This is still my house, too. Actually, it wasn't. The court had been very clear about that yesterday. But apparently, Ryan had selective hearing when it came to legal decisions. Ryan tried my office door handle, then pounded on it when he found it locked. Open this door. We're going to settle this right now. Ryan, you need to leave. I've called the police. The police? Are you serious? I'm your husband. You're my soon-to-be ex-husband who just broke into my house against court orders. This is my house, too. My name is on the deed. I could hear him pacing in the hallway outside my door. Then there was a loud bang, like he'd hit the wall with his fist. And honestly, the property damage just kept adding to his legal troubles. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? His voice was getting louder, more agitated. I'm going to lose everything. My car, my apartment, everything. And for what? Money you don't even need. For justice, Ryan. You tried to steal from me. I didn't steal anything. I took what was mine by right of marriage. Another bang. Harder this time. I was pretty sure he'd just put a hole in my hallway wall. Ryan was really committed to destroying his own defense case. The court disagrees with you. The court is wrong. That judge was biased. He took your side because you're a woman. I almost laughed at that. Judge Martinez had been completely professional, basing his decision entirely on the evidence we'd presented. But apparently, when you're used to getting away with financial fraud, accountability feels like bias. Ryan, the police are coming. If you leave now, maybe this doesn't have to get worse. Worse? How could this get worse? You've destroyed my life. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you came into this marriage with. The only difference is that you can't steal what I worked for. There was silence for a moment, then the sound of something being thrown. It sounded like he'd grabbed something from the hallway table and hurled it against the wall. My grandmother's vase, probably. That was going on the property damage list. I loved you, he said. And for the first time, his voice sounded broken instead of angry. I really did love you at first. No, you didn't. You loved my bank account. That's not true. When we met, when I first asked you out, I didn't know how much money you had. But you figured it out pretty quickly, didn't you? Once you saw my house, my car, my lifestyle. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more dangerous. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. But this isn't over, Zoe. I know things about you. I know your routines, your clients, your weaknesses. A chill ran down my spine. Was he threatening me? Because that would be incredibly stupid, even for Ryan. What's that supposed to mean? It means you might want to be more careful about who you cross. I'm not the only one who knows how much you're worth. Before I could respond, I heard the sound of sirens getting closer. Ryan must have heard them too, because suddenly his footsteps were moving quickly toward the stairs. This isn't finished, he called over his shoulder as he ran. I heard the front door slam, then the sound of his car starting. By the time I made it to my window, he was already backing out of my driveway, tires squealing as he sped away. The police arrived 2 minutes later. I met them at the front door and explained what had happened. The officers took photos of the damage Ryan had done to my hallway wall and the broken vase he'd thrown. They also noted that he'd entered without permission despite ongoing divorce proceedings. Do you want to press charges for breaking and entering? One of the officers asked. Yes. and I want a restraining order. After the police left, I called David to update him on what had happened. Ryan's losing it, I reported. He broke into my house, damaged my property, and made what sounded like threats about knowing my routines and my clients. That's escalation beyond anything we've seen so far. The restraining order will help, but Zoe, you need to be extra careful for the next few weeks. You think he'd actually hurt me? I think he's desperate, humiliated, and facing serious financial consequences for his actions. That's a dangerous combination. David was right to be concerned. But Ryan had made one crucial mistake in his threatening speech. He'd reminded me that I wasn't just a victim in this situation. I was a successful businesswoman who'd built everything I had through intelligence, determination, and the willingness to fight for what was mine. If Ryan wanted to escalate this beyond the courts, he was about to learn that I was more than ready for whatever came next. And honestly, ladies, bring it on. I'd already beaten him legally. If he wanted to try intimidation, he was just giving me more ammunition. The restraining order was granted Monday morning, which meant Ryan had to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my house, and my office. But it also meant the final divorce hearing was expedited to the following Friday. Judge Martinez wanted this case resolved quickly before Ryan's behavior escalated further. And honestly, so did I. By Wednesday, David called with news that changed everything. Ryan's lawyer withdrew from the case, he told me. Apparently, Ryan can't pay his legal fees, and he's been making threats against his own attorney. What kind of threats? Nothing specific, but enough to make his lawyer uncomfortable. The hearing is still on for Friday, but Ryan will be representing himself. Ladies, if you ever want to see a train wreck in slow motion, watch someone represent themselves in court after they've already been caught lying under oath. It's educational. Thursday night, I was working late in my home office when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. The email was from Ryan, sent from a new address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just a message that made my blood run cold. You think you've won, but you don't know what's coming. I've told everyone about you. Your clients, your business contacts, even your neighbors. They all know what kind of person you really are. A heartless woman who destroyed her husband for money. See how your precious business does when everyone knows the truth about Zoe Thompson. My hands were shaking as I forwarded the email to David, then started making phone calls. I called my 3 biggest clients, my business insurance company, and my accountant. If Ryan was spreading lies about me professionally, I needed to get ahead of it. But as I made call after call, I discovered something unexpected. My clients hadn't heard anything from Ryan. My business contacts were confused by my questions. Even my neighbors, when I discreetly checked, had no idea what I was talking about. Ryan was bluffing. He was trying to make me panic, to make me think he had more power than he actually did. And honestly, it was pathetic. Even in defeat, he was still trying to manipulate me. Friday morning, I walked into that courtroom with a different kind of confidence than I'd had the week before. This wasn't just about protecting my assets anymore. This was about showing Ryan and anyone else who might be watching what happened when someone tried to manipulate and intimidate me. Ryan appeared in court without a lawyer, wearing a wrinkled shirt and looking like he hadn't slept in days. When Judge Martinez called the case, Ryan immediately launched into a rambling speech about how unfair the proceedings had been. Your Honor, my wife has turned this divorce into a vindictive attack on my character. She's trying to ruin my reputation, destroy my career prospects, and leave me homeless. Judge Martinez let him talk for about 2 minutes before cutting him off. Mr. Thompson, do you have any evidence to present regarding the asset accounting this court ordered? Ryan fumbled with a manila folder. I have some documents, but Your Honor, I need more time. The requests were unreasonable, asking for information going back 18 months. Mr. Thompson, you've had a week to gather financial records. Either you have the documentation or you don't. Ryan's documentation turned out to be a handful of bank statements with obvious gaps and no records whatsoever of where the gambling losses had occurred or how much money was involved. It was like watching someone try to build a defense case with crayons and construction paper. David presented our final evidence. The threatening email Ryan had sent, records of his break-in at my house, and documentation that he'd violated the court's orders by attempting to contact me. Judge Martinez reviewed everything quickly, then looked directly at Ryan with undisguised disgust. Mr. Thompson, you've had multiple opportunities to comply with this court's orders and to conduct yourself appropriately during these proceedings. Instead, you've chosen to escalate your behavior, violate court orders, and attempt to intimidate your wife. He paused, shuffling through the papers in front of him. Based on the evidence presented, I'm granting Mrs. Thompson a complete divorce with the following terms. You will receive no portion of any assets Mrs. Thompson owned before or during the marriage. You will pay restitution of $47,000 to Mrs. Thompson for funds you remove from marital accounts. Your claim to any interest in the marital home is denied. Ryan started to stand up, but Judge Martinez wasn't finished. Additionally, given your recent behavior, I'm extending the restraining order for 1 year and ordering you to attend anger management counseling. Any violation of these terms will result in immediate jail time. He looked at both of us. This divorce is granted as of today. Mrs. Thompson, you're free to resume your maiden name if you choose. As we left the courthouse, Ryan was arguing with the court clerk about payment schedules and appeal processes. I didn't look back. Because honestly, ladies, when you've won completely, there's no need to gloat. The victory speaks for itself. How long before I get my house deed back in my name only? I asked David as we walked to his car. I can file the paperwork this afternoon. You should have clear title within a week. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, in my house, with my money safely in my accounts, and thought about everything that had happened. Ryan had tried to steal my life's work, manipulate me emotionally, and intimidate me into submission. Instead, he'd lost everything he'd tried to take and ended up worse off than when he started. The BMW he'd been so proud of, seized to pay part of his restitution, the secret accounts he'd bragged about, emptied to cover legal fees and gambling debts, the apartment he'd been staying in, lost when he couldn't make rent. Meanwhile, I'd kept everything that was rightfully mine and learned exactly how strong I could be when someone tried to take it away. 6 months later, I sold the house. Too many bad memories, and honestly, I wanted a fresh start. I bought a beautiful condo downtown and started a new business helping other women protect themselves from financial abuse in relationships. It turns out there are a lot of successful women who've been targeted by men like Ryan, and not all of them are as prepared to fight back as I was. I never saw or heard from Ryan again after the divorce was finalized. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, he'd moved to another state and was working in sales. Apparently, he'd learned that some women are too expensive to try to steal from. As for me, I learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. I learned that love without respect is just manipulation with better marketing. And I learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building a life so good that you forget why you wanted revenge in the first place. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and protecting what's yours. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Share your story in the comments below. Remember, you're stronger than you think, and you deserve relationships built on respect, not exploitation. Thank you for following Zoe's journey. And remember, sometimes the person trying to take advantage of you doesn't know who they're really dealing with. And ladies, that's exactly how we like it.